Okay, great. And we're here live with another episode of The Focal Thought. And my esteemed guest today is Ray Mardia. Welcome, Ray. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. Thank you, Croydon. I'm really happy to be here.
That's awesome. And once again, thank you for being a guest on this podcast. I was perusing through your website and I couldn't stop reading the tabs because each tab was so different. And you've got a lot of good things to say about you and what you do.
Yeah.
And I love the little things you've put in there. If I can quote some of them, you say, "This is what I strive to teach and live." You talk about love. You talk about being human. You talk
Yeah.
about leadership. There's a big focus on mentorship and coaching. You talk about life, nature, being everything. So I want to
Yes.
ask the question: what is it that you do that involves all of these things?
Well, I think that's a beautiful question, and it's such an interesting way. I've sort of attempted to answer this question myself over the years, and it seems that in the beginning I was quite attached to a label, calling myself one thing. But over the years, I've worn many hats. I've had the privilege of serving in a few different capacities. So at this point, I suppose I'm not too attached to the name. People call me a consultant, they call me an advisor, they call me a mentor. But the core of it is that I serve a wide-ranging nature of clients with a host of transformational and leadership questions that they navigate. So these can be personal, this can be in their career, this can be in their health. But if you become a student of transformation, you'll soon see that the principles of change are quite similar in different fields. So yeah, I've been very privileged to serve in different capacities and serve different types of clients over the last couple of years.
Okay. So your clients are open to people who might just say have a personal goal to achieve something, or maybe someone who's sort of got a business and they want their business to achieve a certain, a metric target, and you'll be able to facilitate and help people in both those situations.
Yeah, that's the, I suppose, the means to an end, and the end varies depending on the client, but the means is, through mentorship and transformation and leadership coaching. So yeah, that's a really good way of summarizing it.
Okay, great. So then if someone has an intention and then there is an end result, so I like the word you use that comes in between the two of those, which is transformation. How
Yeah.
easy or how hard is it to transform? Because that involves change, like you're saying, right, at the fundamental level.
Yeah. Well, I think the question of difficulty is an interesting one and perhaps a subjective one as well, because, it's inherently dependent on the individual. So I don't know if difficulty is a frame through which I look at it, but I will say something. The other day I was looking at a meme and it had two different squares. On the left, it had this woman bathed in white clothing and light, and the text was, what people think an awakening looks like. And then on the other side of the meme, you had a woman sort of screaming, asking, what is going on? Who am I? Where am I going? And which is the idea of that transformation or awakening is a time of chaos. So if I were to draw from my own life and draw from some of the work that I've done, I don't know if it's difficult, but it is deep. It is profound. It requires a level of meeting and confrontation with oneself. It requires a peeling away of layers of things that are untrue. And if we look at nature, transformation is really a process of becoming, right? So returning to the truth of who somebody is. So if it's in their health, going back to who they actually are, the vitality and the energy that they feel. If it's their relationships, it's about the truth of their relationships and how they want to love and how they want to be loved. So I don't know if I've looked at it through difficulty, but yeah, there is that level of commitment and depth that is involved in the process.
Got it. And yeah, I mean, I say difficulty because, that's what people sort of normally adhere with, right? Like with things like failure, and then they put the wall up in front of themselves. But I like
Yeah.
what you're saying that if you put it in a different framework, it's really not difficulty. It's just a different challenge, maybe that you sort of have to get over with. And then
Yeah.
once you sort of in mentally you you make this challenge something, simple and maybe, motivational, then
Yeah.
really it becomes fun to do. And then it makes the transformation process easier.
Yeah, that's right. And words are very powerful. Words have certain biochemistry to them. So if I look at life as it's an uphill battle, that's a very, very different definition of life than if I call it a game of chess, or if I call it a dance, or if I call it a song. So it's sort of a deeper awareness, because sometimes people get freaked out if you say, "Oh, transformation is very, very hard. It's an uphill battle." It's like Sisyphus pushing up the rock up the mountain, and just to make it possible for people to have different frames of reference and to find some beauty and some enjoyment in the process as well.
Got it. I like that. So, I mean, the first thing someone should do then is just sort of change their vocabulary, right? Use empowering words rather than disempowering words.
It's a really, really easy way to change your entire frame of reference about the world and about the way you see and feel about things. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's half the battle, or rather, I should say half the fun.
That's right. There we go.
I've learned already so fast.
Beautiful. Love that.
No, that's great. So I wanted to ask you, on your website, I saw you have something called the feminine masculine dance. That really intrigued me. What's that all about?
Oh, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. Well, I want to ask you first of all, like, how familiar are you, or where's your studies or readings taken you? Because that'll give me some context about where to begin and how to answer that question.
You mean specifically or generally?
Yeah, like either in your readings or your research, like whether you've come across any literature or any theories about or practices about masculine and feminine energy.
You know what? I haven't delved too deeply into it, but I do know we came from sort of a civilization that used to worship sort of, the matriarch, and somewhere along timeline that switched into the patriarch, and now that's sort of blended, and there's different segments of a gender, if you will, and gender these days is not what's between your legs; it's what's between your ears. I'm finding, and and I don't think there's a right or wrong. They say the masculine energy gives and the feminine energy receives. There's the whole yin and yang, and you can't give without receiving. You can receive without giving. So both are equally important. So I do think there is a balance on that level. And I just think that there's differences between the two that are good and that are required for life to exist. In a nutshell, that's my sort of, thoughts on gender.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And you know what, we've in terms of like putting it in a social or socio-political context. So I'm not talking about sex. I'm not even talking about gender. What I'm talking about is energy. Certain traits, certain behavioral energy that we have, and the truth is we have both masculine and feminine energy, and as you so beautifully said, the yin yang reflects that at our best, we embody the best of the other. So this isn't a way to sort of separate masculine and feminine energy, but really to delve a little bit deeper into the energetics of what that means and how we can then embody some of those behaviors, in our day-to-day life and in the way that we show up in our relationships. So that's sort of like the core principle, if you will, about masculine and feminine energy. And I found that, in a relationship, or especially in a intimate relationship with our partners, what creates a level of passion, or what creates a really beautiful energy long term, is if there's that polarity. If one person is really embodying the best of that masculine energy and the other person is embodying the core of that feminine energy. So that's like the basic framework in terms of what that is. And it's a way to keep polarity alive, and it's a way for also people to be authentic, so that if you do have repressed masculine energy, there's a way to express it. If you have repressed feminine energy, there's a way for you to embody that, with strength and courage in the way that you show up with people and yourself.
Got it. Okay. And if we look in a situation, sort of, say someone is married, and you have the male and the female, the traditional masculine and feminine energies that we associate with the male and female. Should there be sort of like a fundamental base, and then they can sort of swap, or does it matter at all who has which. For example, the wife in the relationship might be, the one who does the hammering and, the nailing of things. And the husband
Yeah.
might be the one who's cooking, right? I mean, if we talk stereotypically that way.
Yeah. So yeah, and I've come across relationships where the man or one party of the relationship uh will have an energy that we may not traditionally expect. So like I said, you can have a man with the core of feminine energy, and I've also seen like women that have a dominant masculine energy. So it's more about really understanding the truth of who you are, and understanding, your authentic self, so that that part of you is serving the people around you, and it's also enriching your own life, in the way that you make all your decisions, be it in your work, be it in the way that you live your life, be it in your relationships.
Correct. Yeah. And we see that, maybe through media, advertising, marketing, people want to segment themselves into, the traditional masculine stereotype or the traditional feminine stereotype. But like you're
Yeah.
saying, if you are authentic to yourself, be who you are, you can blend and cross over, and it really shouldn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there are different ways that you can find out whether your energy is masculine or feminine or not. Like I know that my core energy is very feminine. There's a level of empathy attached to that. Whereas the masculine is focused, say, like the mission, the quest, right? The singular task or issue at hand. The feminine is more associated with processing multiple layers of information, with the right and left parts of the brain active all the time. And and when the feminine energy sees a problem, and if you look at evolutionary biology, there's this deep desire for the feminine to share and connect, right? Whereas the masculine is quite different. They're the hunters. And so from that perspective, there's that desire to fix things. So if you understand those different frameworks in a relationship, it can completely change the nature of conflict. So instead of expecting, say, your partner to have the feminine energy or masculine energy that's opposite to what they actually are, you can really, again, go into that dance where you can both understand and appreciate each other for what, each people bring to the relationship.
And in order for that to happen, both sides have to be open, right?
Absolutely. I cannot I cannot make this like more clearer. Sometimes when I work with couples in relationships, there's this expectation, say, for one person to do the work, but it's a dance. If we talk about a dance, you'll see that there are both parties giving and receiving. And that's the beauty of a dance, that there's a real partnership in the way that it's created.
Yeah. No, that's correct. And that partnership is important, right? Because you want that flow of this masculine feminine energy to keep circulating, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like we talk about this as well, like what makes the energy open and close. So a feminine energy, like if the masculine knows that the feminine wants to be understood, they want to be heard, the feminine seeks a level of safety in a relationship, and this desire to be understood is very deep in the feminine. If a masculine man can provide that, what they will have is a feminine energy that's very radiant and very open in their presence. So that's a big gift that the masculine can give the feminine. The feminine, on the other hand, can give that gift where they let a man be free. That masculine energy really craves freedom. There's this deep desire for the man to really flourish when they're praised and appreciated. So if you can make that masculine feel like they're your hero, that they're needed, that you value their opinion, there's something really beautiful, and that allows the masculine energy to also open. So there are all these different principles about what makes each energy open. And if people know these sort of very small but profound shifts that they can can bring, they can really see huge changes in their relationships with their partners. And while it's true that this is applicable for an intimate relationship or a personal relationship, this can apply in friendships, with your family, with other people. So I want to extend the invitation for people to see that, in the context of all the relationships that they have.
Got it. And if someone wants to explore, what sort of opposite energy they have in themselves. So for example, if I'm masculine and I want to find out, what feminine energy I have that I haven't been open with or allowed my, to come out, what is something I can do to get that out and to also maybe be comfortable with it and, not have it non-threatening?
Well, that's a beautiful question, because effectively what you're asking is, how do we create that union, right? How do we embrace both? And I think there's a beautiful quote. It's by, you may know him already. He's this Persian mystic. His name is Rumi. And he said that your task is not to seek for love, but to merely remove the barriers that prevent you from receiving it. So, sometimes there's this idea that we need to add certain things, we need to add the part of the other in order to become whole. But the premise of this work is that you are already whole. There may have been certain events and incidents in your life that may have closed you off to a certain aspect of the feminine. There may have been a certain point in your life that gave you a story or a message that it's not safe to be vulnerable. So part of the work is to look at, do some origins work, and to say, okay, where are some of those points in my life where some of those barriers went up? I will sometimes say this to my clients. It's like, there's nowhere to go. There's, you're here. So the journey is really from your head to your heart. And part of that is to go back and go on a bit of a journey and to say, okay, when did some of these barriers actually come up? And who would you be without the barriers? And the answer might surprise you, that there's actually nothing new to learn, but rather, giving yourself permission to express some of those things that you haven't for a while.
Got it. And sort of going back in time and sort of cross-examining and seeing where it is that things got covered up, and that you should release what is being pent up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I mean, to keep it real, like our first model of the feminine, or a first model of the masculine, comes from certain formative relationships. So it can be with our fathers, our mothers, formative friendships, formative experiences. So if you cultivate a process of like self-inquiry, if you're deeply aware of the experiences that have shaped you, you'll see how those experiences have colored, your understanding of the masculine and feminine. So if you want to shift that, then that's a beautiful place to start and go, okay, well, where did some of these beliefs actually come from? And what do I believe? Is there something else that I want to approach my relationships from?
Correct. Yeah. And we can see something as simple as, a child growing up, and maybe, a boy getting into sort of, say, musicals. And then, the father in the family saying, no, don't listen to musicals. You're a boy. You should be playing with cars or robots or, something like that. And you never know, that person could have been the next Andrew Lloyd Webber, right? I mean,
yes. Yes, all these unlived dreams. Yeah. And the thing is, when we're children, we sort of, we look to the adults to be told what these truths and these stories are. So yeah, part of the privilege of being ourselves and becoming adults is that we can re-examine some of those things and, create some new stories if they serve who we actually are.
Correct. Yeah. And I think another thing is not to, like you're saying, label, like with the power of words, maybe something as masculine and feminine also, right? Because the moment you do that, you're sort of segmenting things. So for example, listening to musicals, it's stereotyped as, on the feminine side, but really that's only because we've stereotyped it on the feminine side, right? Like on its own, it knows, that it knows not that it's male or female, right? Like in that.
That's right. Yeah, that's very true. And I mean, it's an interesting thing because I feel like you mentioned this before as well. Like, there's something really beautiful, say, about a strong man who is not afraid to cry, or a really compassionate woman, who's strong and has, that sense of honor and great boundaries in her. So at our best, we are incorporating. There's that sense of union, and you see that. So I suppose. When we label things, it's also about where it comes from, if you will. If we label things as a way to restrict or to judge, that can then limit individuals from embracing different parts of themselves. But if we do use a word to describe or to categorize something, then it's not always harmful. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's about where it comes from.
Correct. Yeah. And I like that you said that labeling sort of, induces judgment and things like that. Because I think we try to label things just to segment and understand, right? There's so much going on. But then along seems to come judgment, and that's where things, get off course, and
Yeah,
it gets a
that's
little
right.
bit hairy.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay, that's great. The other thing I wanted to ask you, so sales from the heart, I saw that on your website. And that's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting because especially someone like myself, I came from an arts background from music, and
Yeah.
I totally sympathize with artists. Artists are
Yes.
great at doing their thing, putting out their
Yeah.
product. But when it
Mm-hmm.
comes into the business side of art,
Yeah.
if they don't have it in them, if they don't have a role model to teach them that, they really don't have a clue about how to navigate that territory. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really a different territory. It's pretty much the yin and yang of art, right? It's art and then into business.
Yeah.
So what I suspect is sales from the heart is your way of sort of getting around formalizing the business aspect of marketing your craft, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, it is. Well, first of all, so much to say. I mean, I did a double degree credit, and I did a arts law degree. So while I went to become a lawyer, my first love is literature, right? If I could, I'd probably just study novels and language, and so I have so many friends who are musicians, and I've spent so much of my uni years, being at the School of Music and cheering my friends on at the School of Music. So I feel like my heart is. I mean, like I'm not a musician, but I deeply sort of resonate with that role of the artist, and so I understand, this sense of feeling like really icky about that meeting between art and commerce. And yet, if we think about it, art and commerce are old friends. Since time immemorial, there's been that conversation between art and commerce and how one needs the other in order to flourish. So yeah, it's a curious thing. Throughout some of the sales training that I've done over the years, I've noticed, and I've been told by various teachers as well. Like, in a business, you need the skills of an artist, you need the skills of a manager, and you need the skills of an entrepreneur. So there are at least sort of three different types of skills that are really necessary for a business to scale and to do well. One person can have all three of these skills, of course, but usually if you're a creative, you'll find that your heart is in the artist. You love the craft, you love the product, you love the feeling that the experience or the service creates with the client. So all this stuff about creating systems and knowing how to sell, that can actually be really overwhelming and not be truly aligned with people who are artists at heart. So I deeply empathize with that, first of all, because I very much started my journey like this. I absolutely felt sick, when I would try and sell my services. And, after doing some reflection on this, I was asking, well, what is it that I feel really uncomfortable about? What is it that makes me want to feel nauseous when I'm talking about selling? And I think it's this idea of either being, because I've seen so many instances of sales that are inauthentic, that seem a bit plagued by opportunism, that just have that slimy, gross feel, right? So I like from the get-go, I was very convinced that I was not going to sell this way and I was not going to teach sales this way. So that sort of led me to, like a question about, well, okay, well, how do the two integrate? How can I be an artist who sells, and how can I do it from a place that is loving and that is in complete service to the other person? So I think that happened when I started to really change some of the language around sales. Like, for example, a lot of sales are pursued after connecting a client to their pain, but another way to also connect someone to something that they want to buy is through pleasure, through the things that they're excited about, through their vision. So just getting a little bit deeper into sales psychology and, if you will, just picking out certain elements that reflected who I am. And that has really allowed me to sell in a way that is very heart-centered and authentic. And if I were to elaborate on that, I think I saw this study that in the 80s, you needed to see a business 4 times. You needed 4 impressions to buy from it. Whereas now, with the advent of Facebook and social media and all these banner ads, people need about 16 to 19 impressions or communications with a business before they're interested in buying. So I feel like if we skip that, but if we actually cultivate relationships with the clients, that can go a long way to build and develop that relationship.
So you're talking about connecting with the client on maybe an emotional level first.
Yes.
Before even getting into what your product is or what your business is.
Absolutely.
And with the pain point.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting to a point where, like you're selling them an experience rather than a concept alone, because I think a lot of ads just are about selling the concept. But if you're selling a service, or if there are ways that you can get people to experience your art, and if there's a way that you've cultivated a relationship with the client, you'll always see that the sale happens in their world. It doesn't happen in yours, right? So the deeper you understand them, the more you make them feel seen and loved and understood, the more like the sales process feels like it's in integrity for me. At least that's been my experience, and it's what I teach to my clients as well.
Oh, that's great. So say, for example, we had someone who was doing essential oils, and they've got a really good product that is able to, say, cure the common cold. How should they maybe be going about this rather than, do the traditional Facebook page or, the website and start, spamming people with emails or, coupons, things like that?
Yeah. So my thing is, because my main service is coaching, I would say start with one person. And what I mean by that is, instead of having an impersonal relationship with 50 people, 100 people, or 1,000 people, really, really change the life of one person. So if you're meeting them, if you're with them, you have a deep understanding, like, what is their intention? What's actually holding them back from the health or the level of vitality or the level of radiance that they want? Having a deeper understanding of what the client needs will then allow you to see if your oils are a solution or if they serve some of the things that the clients want to experience. So it's not approaching it from a place of, they need this, they're broken without this. It's like, no, they're whole, there's nothing wrong with them. But the process is stemming from a place of curiosity, like you having a deep curiosity about what this person wants to experience, and then offering your oils or your products, your services, as a way to enhance those desires and those experiences.
Okay, so it's almost like sales from the heart is if you were sort of speaking to a friend. It's just a casual conversation. You're being authentic about, what the issue is or the pain point.
Yeah.
And then you don't even have to offer the solution, because if you sort of, have done the conversation correctly, they might
Yeah.
automatically ask, okay, well, this thing that you do, would it help me? Or, something like that.
Absolutely. And and it's really interesting because I think that sales conversations should be like coaching conversations, right? Like instead of telling them, or instead of giving them a prescription, you're asking really beautiful questions and you're guiding them through a process of self-discovery. And if at the end of that process you can help them further with your product or your service, you'll see that it comes from a place of alignment, and it will be something that resonates with both you and the other person. So it comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of unconditional service to that person. And from that place, asking for money or asking for the sale is just incidental, because what you're serving is something higher. It's a fulfillment of the relationship that you have.
Nice. So it's almost like, the sale with, the financial transaction, and the close of the sale rather is the byproduct of the conversation transaction that has gone through.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I am always, sometimes we'll see question or conversations or sales conversations, like they will end with the costs, right? Like this is how much it costs, and that's how much it will be. And in any other relationship, if you guys went out to dinner, or if you're having a conversation with a friend, the last thing you say is not about how much something costs, right? Like there's an end to what's possible for the person, what they're excited about, what their visions are. So no matter what the outcome is, you have a really beautiful heart-centered energy throughout the conversation. Because time and time again, I've noticed that what people buy isn't necessarily the product or the service. It's an experience. And what they purchase is how you make them feel and whether you can bring the best out in them. So I want to encourage that in people. Like, traditional sales may seem fast and easy, but ultimately you'll have raving fans and you'll have clients that are with you for years, through all the different seasons in life, if you can cultivate these deeper relationships with them.
Nice. It's funny you mentioned that in terms of, products, features, benefits. I was at a department store here called Best Buy once, which is, Canada's version of, selling appliances and electronics and computers. And I was at the TV section, and one of the salesmen there sat me down on a comfortable couch, and he was demonstrating one of the newest models that had come in, along with the sound system. Mm-hmm. And not once during, the 2 minutes of what he showed me on the channel, did he ever talk about, the specs of the TV. He just showed me, what it was. So he put on something, and then he played around with the audio, and he just let me sit there. And, like you're saying, it was an experience. Yes. And, I was ready to buy this thing until I saw the price. but he had me sold without even saying anything. Like, he actually showed me the experience of, what should be the end product, rather than ramble on about, the 720p or et cetera, or, anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like they're not selling the concept, they're selling the experience, right? They're selling how it makes you feel. And to not do it from a gross place, like from a place of opportunism, but to really fall in love with the client and go, this is what they want in their life. That's what they want to feel. And you know what? And I've said this to my clients, and I feel this in my own way. Like, if I don't think a client is a good fit, then I don't work with them. Because it's not something that I honestly feel like is integrity to who I am. So heart-centered sales also means, living your values, right? Not just applying it to the conversation, but in the way that you do business and in the way that you conduct your relationships.
Correct. And it might not be fair for the other person as well, right? If you're not a good fit.
Yeah, and it's like, what are you going to do if, you say that you can help them with something, or if you don't actually like some of the, some of what they bring to the table, it doesn't actually serve either parties moving forward if the foundation or if the relationship is based on like something that's untrue.
Correct, which is just a basic, financial transaction.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I guess this is where, the masculine, feminine sort of dance comes in if you combine it with sales from the heart, right? Like if two people, the salesperson and the client, they're also
Yeah.
connecting and dancing with the masculine and feminine energy, no matter who has what. That
Yeah.
also helps to sort of enforce the connection, right? Which leads to a sale.
Oh, I'm so glad you connected the two because they are absolutely related. You know, it's going to be like a completely different sales conversation. You know, when we talk about, say, masculine and feminine energy, some of the easiest ways to help clients into this work is through the language of archetypes. So, you know, Carl Jung did a lot of study on this, of course, but archetypes go thousands of years back, you know, with like Vedic myths and old scriptures and stuff. But you know, modern iterations of that is connecting someone with their lover, with their warrior, with the sovereign, you know, the king or the queen. And what's the other one? The magician. Those are the four main sort of archetypes that we talk about. And similarly, in the feminine energy, you have the goddess, you have the martyr, you know, you have the sage or the mystic, and you have the maiden, and you have all these other different archetypes. And if you bring those archetypes to a sales conversation, you have all these different ways of connecting with the other person, of being all these different energies that can really deepen that relationship as you're with that person.
And that essentially becomes it becomes the product and the actual product itself, right? I mean,
Yes.
you're offering an authentic relationship to a person. That's great,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I think quite in like part of this is like stemming from my own frustration as well. I think the services industry or the transformational industry gets a bad rap, you know, because you have all these like so many slimy snake oil salesmen, you know, with their huge promises and like 7-figure income in 30 days, all that sort of stuff. So some of it also came from a frustration and feeling empty after being overpromised and underdelivered. So I feel I want to encourage people to also look at the things that frustrate them about this process, because your frustrations will also hold some insights about what you value. And that can be like a unique selling point. You can bring that to the conversation when you're building those relationships with your clients.
correct, yeah. And I think it also comes from media, right? Like all those movies they did about sales, like
Yes.
Glengarry Glen Ross, Boiler Room,
Okay.
you know, the
Yeah,
80s car salesman kind of thing. Like
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
that
That's
sales
true.
that you're almost scared off, and you know that's your knowledge, or you know, your impression of the sales world. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like if you're saying just be authentic, be from the
Mm-hmm.
heart, establish trust, and have an emotional connection, then
Mm-hmm.
once you have that, you know, client, you've got that client for life.
Yeah. And I've been so privileged. Like I don't often talk about, you know, the inner workings of my business, but about 60% of my clients uh, will recommit to working with me, and there are some that I've been working with for about 3 to 4 years, and I'm just deeply privileged because at this point I've seen them, you know, have children and like move careers and go through all these incredible milestones in their lives. And I get the call when they're moving through these beautiful changes, you know, across different fields in their life. So it comes across like, instead of getting like a quick sale that's stemming from a place of intimidation and inadequacy, I will choose this any day of the week, you know, where I really get to bear witness to someone's life and I really get to guide them. And because that's a privilege, it really, really is, if you can be in that role.
Correct, yeah. And you know, we say client for life, but then we should also say sales for life, right? So then we
Yeah.
have that focus.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's like, it's a much, much deeper relationship. And this is like, you know, it comes from Steve Jobs as well. You know, it's like, you know, how you get a new client, you keep your existing one. um,
Nice.
and I feel like that's it. It's like, yeah, you know, it's not less work rather, but it requires a deep love for the people that you serve.
Correct. And then you won't be afraid of anything. You'll be able to go out there and talk about your product. And, you know, as an
Yeah,
artist, you won't look at it as a commerce sort of conversation, right? It'll just be a natural
exactly.
conversation.
Yeah, I love helping people with this. I know I have clients who would just freeze, just not be able to talk about this, So over time I've like developed scripts and just stuff that I've worked on myself, that can really help people. And, doing some of the belief work so that you've got some great language and pre-frames before you're going into a conversation. You've got great energy, so that, the person on the other end feels really seen, and they know that you're not shit scared about the sale, but you're there and you're there to serve them.
I like that. You're working on a holistic perspective. And that's why I guess you say life, nature is everything, right?
Yeah, that's right. Right? It's not one or the other. Nature's very happy making room for multiple things.
Masculine, feminine, and then who knows, maybe there'll be a third one that comes along with our evolution.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Who knows? The more the merrier.
Anyway, thank you very much for this. I did learn some good things. And again, I thank you for that. And I wish you all the success in your journey and in the people that you work with as well. And for people who want to get in touch with you, your website is raymardia.com. Is there any other good ways for them to get through to you, or just the website the best one?
Yeah, the website's great. I've got a podcast myself. If you want to hang out with me on YouTube, you can go to youtube.com/Ray Mardia. But yeah, if you shoot me an email, if there's anything that I've said that resonates with you, or if you've got more questions, feel free to reach out. But thank you so much, Croydon. I really appreciate being here. And I always love speaking with kindred spirits about, important things. So it's just meant the world that you've asked such beautiful questions today. And I've been really happy to speak with you. So thank you.
No, pleasure. And I'll put all those links into the show notes as well, so people can access them that way.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, great. So thanks very much and have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Cheers. Thanks. Bye.